This is the Hidden Why Podcast, episode 991. My interview with JF Benoist. We're discussing his book, Addicted to the Monkey Mind. Please enjoy. G'day, JF. Welcome to the Hidden Why Podcast. Great to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's pleasure, mate. Pleasure. Congratulations to the success of your book as well. Looks like it's doing phenomenally well. You just said 30,000 copies sold. That's amazing, man. Very good. So the book, guys out there listening, is Addicted to the Monkey Mind, changing the programming that sabotages your life. Now, I suppose, if we can focus on the mind and the mindset with a bit more clarity, I think that's where everything starts in life. And regardless of our circumstances, the pains and pleasures we may be experiencing, the situation that we're in, the good, the bad, I think if we have a good, strong mindset, we can make all moments a little bit more happy.
Well, I would say that, a healthy mindset is a happy life, that's for sure.
What got you into this work and this research?
Well, I've been, I was introduced to the self-help world when I was about 15 years old. I did a seminar called Relationship. It was a derivative of EST, which was a huge organization in the 70s. And so it was kind of like, I think I've been wired in to have such a huge passion and interest to try to understand, how we get to be happy, how we get to thrive. And, over the years studied with some amazing people, Barry Neil Kaufman in Massachusetts, studied a process of Socratic inquiry for 3 years. And I've been involved in a men's organization called the Mankind Project, which does, modern initiation. And so there's just a lot of different things that I've accumulated, a lot of experience over the years about understanding how the mind and body relationship is so important and how we are conditioned and programmed to think the way we do. And as long as we're operating out of that conditioned thinking, it's very challenging for us to be successful. And some of us have been blessed enough to have received some good conditioning, but it's pretty rare. Yeah,
there's parts to us all, isn't there, that we need to unwire. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but certainly invert. So what is this ET that you talk about?
The what? Sorry, say that again.
Is it EAT or ET?
I'm not.
Therapeutic methodology, experiential engagement therapy.
Yeah.
How do you pronounce it?
Yeah, exactly. So, so experiential engagement therapy is the principle behind it is to really understand that most of the thinking happens at the nervous system level. And so most of us are not aware of that. So we operate out of an analytical mind, and we think that we can be in charge of our lives just by discerning and thinking and analyzing and finding solution to things. But the truth is when we get triggered, what's happening is that the body remembers all kinds of conditioned and things that have happened. And in that moment of being triggered, your mind is being hijacked by that conditioned mind, basically. And that's why, I call the book Addicted to the Monkey Mind, because we don't even realize that we're sort of so hooked to that way of responding. And that's why people have a hard time creating change. It doesn't matter what the change is. You want a healthier body, you want to, have more money, a better career, whatever it is. People can't seem to achieve it. And it's because they're not in charge of their nervous system. So
is this like the subconscious level, or what's the difference between that and the nervous system?
Well, let me give you some specific example to make it more digestible. Think of all the times that someone gets triggered. It's as simple as, a partner says, why didn't you take the dog to the vet? And the person sort of gets upset and said, but I've been working hard all day. Where is that response coming from? So if you look at all the shortcomings, all the areas where we just fall short to communicating in a peaceful way, right? Those are all basically triggered moments that come from a conditioned monkey mind.
Yeah.
And so as long as we don't understand how to navigate that, we're caught in a circular fashion of repeating the same pattern and behaviors.
So possible to change?
It's very challenging because the nervous system never gets addressed. So it's kind of like we use our mind for it's not the right tool, right? It's like you need a hammer, you're using a screwdriver. It will never work because the nervous system needs our attention and needs to be integrated.
So when we talk about, let's say, just giving up a habit as an example for this conversation, most people would, I don't know, giving up drinking, for example, you may just, get rid of the alcohol out of the house. But that doesn't always stop the habit.
Well, that's one way that we follow the analytical mind, right? So it's a fix-it mindset solution that says if you do this, then it should work. But what happens when your partner says something, or you're at work and somebody says something, and then you're triggered, and then you're driving by the liquor store? What's going to happen? You're going to stop and you're going to buy the liquor and go sit in the park or whatever it is that you do. So what we're not looking at is that the source of the drinking is not the booze. It's the triggered nervous system that never gets integrated and dealt with.
Yeah. So how do we become aware of this nervous system and the triggers, I suppose?
Well, it's very exciting to me. I find it profound that we can learn a different way to communicate with ourselves and with other people. I call it the language of the nervous system. And it's about learning how to become in alignment with your experience instead of most of us are trained and conditioned to want to avoid the experience. So the experience, which one of the big part of what I talk about in Addicted to the Monkey Mind is the fact that our emotions are one of the highest form of intelligence that we possess. So to give you some example, let's say, personally, I grew up in such a way where there was a lot of anxiety in the household. So I was raised by a single mother who was overwhelmed, had 3 kids, and one of my older sister had epilepsy, so she was always in the hospital. So my mother was trying to keep up, working a full-time job, and So what would happen though on a daily basis is that she would act out anxiety and anger, and would constantly sort of make it so predominant that she associated basically that men were irresponsible because they didn't take responsibility because she was married to an alcoholic who never took responsibility for the family or the children. And so slowly what I didn't realize is my nervous system learned to associate being a responsible man with anxiety. So if something happens, and let's say with my company, there's some financial trouble, my nervous system will directly go to the response of anxiety as a way to try to take care of myself.
Right.
Okay. So that's not like something that I can sort of prevent from happening because it's been conditioned in me. And it happens to all of us, right? So what I can do about it, though, is develop some very specific skills to be able to bring consciousness to it. One of the skills that I teach a lot is the breath, using the breath as a way to access the experience, and then tracking the experience back to a core belief that's being triggered. So you see, when I get stressed about finances, the core belief that's being triggered is that I'm not a responsible man. And so as long as that belief goes unquestioned, or I don't verify the validity of that, cognition, I'm stuck to be doomed by whatever experience financially creates stress, and then I can just be caught in a loop trying to fix the things externally, but it never addressed what's happening in the nervous system, right?
How do you identify that that's the core nervous system response, like that I'm not a responsible man, as an example?
Right. It's something that once you see, most of us think of recognizing those you can call them, character defect or whatever, but they're not even that. They're just conditioned program way of thinking that we've built an identity around it, right? So does that make me weak if I acknowledge that I have one of those? And this is one of the biggest problem, and this is why we don't get to it, is because there's so much shame around all this, right? So we have to learn that the language of the nervous system is the language of the heart. It's about opening up to the wounding that we receive. And that the wounding that exists within us is not something weak to recognize. It's the opposite. It's a strength. It's something that will make you stronger, will make you super smart, and will make you, invincible in a way. Because now what's happening to me is when anxiety shows up, I go to the breath, I go to my body, I recognize the anxiety, I integrate it, and then I take a shortcut and I go, oh, am I thinking that anxiety is going to make me a responsible man here? Am I thinking that I'm not enough because this is not going the way I thought it was going to go, or this venture is failing, or, this financial struggle just showed up? So, and then once I'm able to recognize that, verify it very consciously with my adult self in the here and now, I can suddenly experience my whole nervous system calming down. And I provided reassurance. It's like we're multifaceted. Like we don't realize that. We have multiple parts of ourselves, right? Yeah. So it's like the conditioning in the monkey mind has parts that are wounded, and it has parts that are protective parts, and there's different parts that show up to try to sort of minimize the damage, right? But those never, ever address the real issue, right? So we have to look at it through a different lens, and the book talks about developing what I call an observing mind, which is basically the adult self. And think of all the ways that we function super well in our lives. That's the self. That's the part of ourselves that is not, in those moments when we function well, we're not being hijacked by the wounded part or the protector part or by our conditioning. We're just functioning in the present moment. Yeah. Right? We don't know how to access that part when we get triggered. That's the issue.
So this nervous system, this sort of automated response that we are conditioned to, we can't really change that. We can just become more aware of it, so then we can better manage it. Is that correct?
It's so beautiful that you said that, because this is exactly the cycle of what most people are stuck into. Is they're trying to fix it, and they're thinking of it as if it was something that they could permanently change. Right? It's like they're looking for the ultimate recipe. And conditioning doesn't work that way. It's truly, exactly what you said. It's about integration.
Right. That's what integration. Because I think, if you're that way inclined, anxious in your situation every time, and you're constantly observing and becoming self-aware of it, and then, I guess, choosing how to manage it, slowly that's going to condition it in the reverse. Is that right?
Yes, and what's important to understand is that the experience itself is what creates the change, not the thinking.
No. So we can change anything through experience, can't we, really? The more you do of one thing, then the less likely you'll do the other thing that you used to do.
Right. It's like, think of it, you cannot learn to ride a bicycle by talking about it.
No.
And the same is true for changing the condition and the program way that we're all stuck in. So what's important is, imagine this, some of the shortcuts that I've really, really learned that are profound are the simplest. So let me give you an example. Why is it that people they have New Year resolutions, they want to change their lives, they want to get thinner, they want to do, all sorts of things, and how many people fail at it consistently? Yeah. Right? So if you look at it, it's because they're functioning from a mindset, and that mindset is a fix-it mindset. And it doesn't integrate anything, and it doesn't look at the current experience as an important part of the equation. The mind is stuck in the future. So I'll give you an example. I used to go biking, and at some point I realized that I wasn't happy about going biking. Yeah. And I thought, well, that's really strange. Like, what just happened? And I started noticing that my mind was, as every single time, was focused on being fit or going a certain distance. It was just like all this future agenda of changing me. Okay. And what the body needs is that, so the body gets stressed when we think like that, right? Because the body is saying, oh, well, you're only going to love me when you're thin, or when you're more fit, or when you have more money, or you see what I mean? So the mind is chasing something in the future, and the body's in stress right now because it knows that you're not in a relationship with it. And so imagine, it's as simple as this. What I did with the biking is I set two things in my mind. I said, okay, I want to go biking for two reasons. The first one is that I want to have air in my lungs. I want to experience air in my lungs.
Yeah.
And the second is I want to experience nature. I want to see the trees around me, and I want to see the animals and the whatever. So as soon as I got on the bicycle, how long do you think it takes for those two things to happen?
Not long.
And so the reward is immediate, right?
Yeah.
And then I keep my focus. This is what mindfulness is all about. This is what developing an observing mind is all about. So what happens is, after I've done this 10 times, where I've gone biking, and my focus the entire time is, oh my gosh, I got air in my lungs. Wow, look at this bird singing. Look at the trees. Look at this mountain. Look at, and just the whole focus. After I've done that 10 times, when I wake up in the morning and think of biking, my whole body lights up.
Yeah, there you go. Changing the way through through the experience.
And it's so life-giving. It is absolutely. Let me give you some other examples that are so simple. One of the things the body really needs is to be seen. And we don't realize that. Like, let's say you go to the grocery store. How many of us will come home and will report to our loved ones, wow, it was so amazing. I went to the grocery store and the cashier just gave me the biggest smile and said something about my shirt. And then we got into a conversation about, right? And so where is that joy coming from? What you were seen. The person saw and liked something about that you were wearing, but there was a connection and you were seen. And we don't realize how much being seen is an incredible, crucial part of mental health. Yeah. Of being in your body in the here and now. And so think of all the ways that we could make efforts to see other people, and that in exchange, other people would actually see us. One of my favorite example that happened, not too long ago is I was walking. I like to bike, but I also like to power walk. And in Hawaii, we have all these hills, right? So I'm power walking this hill. It's like 4 miles, and I just love it, right? I just power walk this thing and breathe air in my lungs, nature. And as I'm coming back down, there was a local guy who's pulling out with his truck, and he rolls down his window and he said, "Hey, bro," he said, "have you been power walking this whole hill?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, you're an animal," And he gives me a big smile and drives off. And as I'm standing there, I was like beaming, right? I was beaming. And why? Well, here's a person that I don't know, a complete stranger, who took the time and saw me, right? And then my body is vibrating with joy. And so it's important to understand that shaping a different mental health has to happen experientially.
What do you find the biggest challenge to, the people that you teach about this therapy, or this methodology, I suppose? What is the biggest obstacle in making it work for them?
Well, I think the biggest one is that we don't realize that we argue for our limitations.
We argue?
Yeah, meaning that we don't realize that we are busy defending our sense of self-worth.
Yeah.
And we were not even conscious of it. So most of us don't like the experience that we have. Most of us are busy avoiding denying, either imploding with our emotions or exploding with our emotions. And neither of those ways are about integrating the emotion. So it's a challenge to think of feelings as a form of intelligence.
Yeah.
Right? To give you another example, you cannot, if you ask people, if you repress your anger, do you get happy?
No.
If you repress your sadness, do you get happy? And so everybody would tell you no, of course. But yet, so we don't realize that all emotions are interconnected, right? You cannot separate them and say, okay, I'm going to put anger on the side and I'm just going to be joyful. Well, no, the anger is there to give you some information. Usually it's about an inner boundary that you're crossing with yourself. And so if you don't look at that, you're going to stay and remain angry because you're not integrating it and you're not acknowledging the belief that's behind that emotion. And so you have to integrate those emotions, and that way you integrate and verify the value of the thinking, and the thinking becomes much more accurate to the current situation. It's not just stuck in the past.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge. The challenge is to learn to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And to see how vulnerability is a strength. It's not a weakness.
Yeah. And that's probably, like you said, it's one of the hardest things to challenge oneself with in regards to becoming more self-aware, is it's being vulnerable about that, and letting yourself go there. Because I think a lot of people about self-awareness, as soon as they enter that sort of level, they pick up on things that maybe scare them a little bit about themselves. And that's when probably that more negative self-talk comes into play as well, and that then, shuts them down further.
Yeah. And it's not our fault, and we have to develop compassion and kindness towards ourselves, because think of how many of us grew up in a family where we were asked thousands of times, why didn't you do your homework? I mean, it looks innocent, right? But you know what that does to a nervous system over time? What is the belief that's being adopted? It's simple. It's like, somehow I'm not enough. If I have to be reminded, and if I have to be told day in and day out, why didn't you do your homework? Then fundamentally the nervous system starts being wounded and thinking there's something wrong with me.
That's right.
So later on in life, we don't realize how this is the computer now. You have to think it's like, if somebody was sitting there at your computer and putting in the coding, right? That's it. Why didn't you do your homework was the coding. It was just like, there it is, right?
Yeah.
And so you can't expect yourself to suddenly be a mature adult when that's the kind of coding that went into you.
And I think that's a really good point. I mean, that coding has developed over years, and for us, a lot of people, when they want to improve themselves for whatever it is, whether it's giving up a bad habit or just self-development in general, wants to get better at their job, their relationships, they have this great motivation, whatever triggers that motivation to do it, and they get into it. But then they realize it's constant, it's hard work. And that's like anything in life. It's continually something you have to continually practice to improve upon. It's not going to be something that you can do today and then things are going to be better, because it's embedded in that nervous system, like you said.
Yeah, and if we can realize, though, think of how much energy and time and money that everybody puts in building a career, right? Or there's so many things that we do, and I mean, most people brush their teeth every day and floss, or most people take time to cook food, and those are all essential parts of being a healthy human being, right? And it's just that in society we haven't been taught that there's basically some basic skills that we can apply to our lives if we do them every day, that can make all the difference in building a strong mental health and not be under the spell of that conditioned monkey mind. Right?
Yeah.
Like, for example, developing a breath. So it's one aspect of what I talk about in the book, which is it's very, very simple. The breath is what connects you to your body.
Yeah.
And your body has information mostly that comes in through emotions. But the breath is the bridge. The breath is the way that you can actually access all this information, because the information doesn't come analytically.
No.
Right? So building a practice, very simple. I do it 3 or 4 times a day, depending.
How does
usually
that look?
about 15 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
And it provides a
Just breathing
sense
exercise.
and the breathing is only witnessing. That's the practice, is witnessing what's going on in my nervous system, what's going on in my body.
So do you close your eyes and sit on your seat and just have deep breaths, or,
Yeah, I do
breathe?
a circular breath that, something I teach in the book, but it's basically the way animals breathe. If you watch their stomach, it moves back and forth. So it's like breathing down into the belly button. Like imagine you got a balloon from your chest to your belly button, and you want to fill up the whole balloon, and you fill up the bottom of the balloon first. And then once it's totally full, you release it. And as soon as it's totally empty, you fill it back up. And you just sit in a chair with your back as straight as you can get it. And you can either keep your eyes open or close. But the main thing is to, initially when I teach this to people, I tell them, imagine that your programming and conditioning brings a lot of discomfort that you're not aware of, and you have all these coping mechanisms. So imagine that instead of going to the coping mechanism, what we're going to do now is bring presence to this discomfort. So if you start to do this breath, I tell people, expect to feel discomfort. And so I even told myself when I started doing this, I would sit, and before I sat, and I always put a timer. I really recommend people use a timer, because you don't want your monkey mind to tell you when it's done, because it's going to tell you that this is a waste of time, So you have to sit, put a timer, breathe, and then the focus is I welcome all this discomfort. Whatever's going to rise up, I'm not going to try to fix it or change it. I'm going to just keep breathing through it. And that sends the message to the body, oh, this is not so bad after all.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. You get used to the practice of when that comes up in the real situation, that you'll be the same. You will be not reactive. You'll be more able to observe.
It's exactly what we do. Because when you get triggered, when you have a practice of breath, the first thing you do when you get triggered is you breathe.
Yeah. So you just do that a few times a day, this practice, huh?
Right, because you've been training your body to breathe into the discomfort. So when discomfort shows up, your body's already trained. Oh, that's what I do. When discomfort shows up, I start breathing.
That's the way to go, isn't it, really?
Oh, it's
So do you do that morning, lunch, and night sort of thing?
Yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah. No, I really like it. I like the title, Addicted to the Monkey Mind. It makes sense. Like if we can have that practice and become more observing of our mind in those situations, we can then adopt the right, behaviors or experiences to help us, ultimately over the longer term, change that. And I think we have to start, somewhere, and perhaps that's a good place. I like it, like the breathing exercise. It reminds me of the mindfulness meditation practice that I started adopting many years ago, and I certainly noticed a big impact. And it wasn't immediate, it took a few years until I started really appreciating the benefits of how I was in certain situations, and not perfect now, but certainly does pay off over the longer term.
One of the things that's phenomenal about the breath is when we combined it with the awareness that it can bring us, right? So this witnessing is much more profound, because the witnessing is not seeking enlightenment. It's not seeking to feel good. It's not seeking to change you. It's not seeking any of this.
Yeah.
The breath in this way, in this practice of mindfulness, is the witnessing of this conditioning.
Yeah.
And for me, I still think to myself, oh my gosh, like how long, like truly, how long is this going to go on?
Yeah.
Because the more you witness, the more it gets loud, because you realize how unconscious you were, and the more conscious you become, the more you go, wait a second, this mind is really insane. You know, and it's very freeing to realize the insanity of that mindset, because in truth, the majority of what we think, you know, there's a research that shows that 95% of what we're afraid of never, ever manifests. Yeah. And so that's a lot of crazy thinking, you know.
That's right.
That doesn't do anything. It doesn't go anywhere. So it's a beautiful thing to develop these skills.
It's pretty cool stuff, mate. What can people do to reach out to you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so the book is on Amazon, available
I'll stick a link in the show notes, guys, for everyone listening, so you can pick up a copy.
Yeah, and one of the things, I really love the audiobook, by the way. It's been a big hit too, because you follow these two characters. It's very relatable, and they have all the struggles that we have, and they get introduced to this monkey mind, and then they start understanding, oh my gosh, I'm really ruled by this monkey mind, and they start developing the skills to build an observing mind, and then they start helping other people. And so it's very relatable, real life examples. So the stories are great, and when you order the audiobook, you can listen to it on your phone, and it's really easy and entertaining and fun. And there's a Kindle version as well. And then we have a center in Hawaii that we help people with the mental health issues and stress, anxiety, depression, addiction, eating disorder, all sorts of things. It's called the Exclusive Hawaii. And then I have a professional site, jfbenoist.com. And I do a lot of continuing education for therapists. I travel around the world and do workshops for the public and therapists. So and there's online events that we do as well.
I love it. Busy man.
Yes.
JF Benoist, pleasure in having you on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, Lee.
Guys, check it all out at thehiddenwhy.com, episode 991. Until next time, peace, passion, and purpose. See you soon. Thanks, guys, for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed what you heard. I hope you love what you're hearing. If you like this episode, guys, or any of the episodes that you're listening to here at The Hidden Why, please do me a favor by sharing it. You can share it with your families. You can share it with your loved ones. You can do that by using your favorite social media channels, using the icons on the platform that you're listening to The Hidden Why podcast. Also, guys, if you're a fan of the show, please connect with me. Connect with me at thehiddenwhy.com. I love to hear from you. I love to converse with the people that listen to this show to find out what they enjoy, what they don't enjoy, and perhaps if they have any questions or feedback for the show as well. You can stay up to date with all that I'm releasing here, guys. I do a solo show every Monday, a 3-minute thought every Thursday. I do 2 interviews a week on a Wednesday and a Saturday, and a book review every Friday. You can stay up to date with all that by subscribing to my newsletter at thehiddenwhy.com. Just enter your email address there, and also subscribing to the podcast on the platform that you choose to listen to your podcasts. You can also support the show, guys, by using the Amazon links at thehiddenwhy.com. So if you like books, you can get all the books that I review there, and anything else really that you like to purchase through Amazon. So use that link, it helps support the show. And we've also got a deal with Audible, guys. Audible is a fantastic way to listen to all your favorite books. We've got a deal with them so you can get 2 free books when you subscribe subscribe to a 30-day free trial. So check that out again at thehiddenwhy.com. Guys, that's it from me. You know what to do. Go out there, breathe more passion into every single moment. Do everything with greater purpose, and in doing so you will discover your hidden why. This is The Hidden Why. My name's Lee Marnuzzi. Until next time, peace, passion, and purpose. See you soon.